What's going on, boxing fans? I'm back here with another video here, chef, for you guys. Gonna be giving my breakdowns and predictions on what is going to happen on the kind of not, well, it is stacked card of boxing that we'll be getting soon in July 12th, just about a month ahead away. We have headlining Edgar Berlanga versus Hamza Sheeraz in a four-fight boxing card with very good names. If you're in the know of boxing, these names and these matchups, I think, are actually pretty. They're pretty good. They're not maybe astonishing like pay per view. Absolutely need to be watched. But it is a good card nonetheless. And obviously, we start this card with Imam Katayev versus David Morrell. Imam Katayev, undefeated fighter with 10 wins, 9 KOs. I've seen some film on him. I think the KOs are kind of, I wouldn't say fake, but he's been facing a lot of cans. Obviously, just based off the look of him and how people perceive him being a Russian fighter, but actually he's fighting out of Australia. He looks like, a similar guy as an Artur Beterbiev, similar build where the power and the timing is just insane. But actually, that's not the type of fighting style that he has. He's actually more of a volume puncher. Obviously, he's in the cruiserweight division, so he's going to be hitting hard, or excuse me, maybe in the light heavyweight division. I think these actually guys are going to go at it with each other. Um, Obviously, he carries some type of power, but more of a volume puncher. Focuses a little bit more on speed and just landing shots instead of landing hard. More power. Stiff shots. Actually, is pretty slick. Has decent head movement, something that obviously with those type of fighters in the region that they come from. Again, obviously he doesn't train there because he trains in Australia. You wouldn't expect that, and that's something that you wouldn't really like see. Obviously, you would get the Soviet style long guard, in and out type of just type of style that usual boxers have when they obviously are fighting from out of Russia. So that's Aman Katayev. Seen some film on him. Last time out, he had a fight against a dude named Palacios. And that fight was actually very entertaining. I think he won the majority of the rounds, and he pretty much just beat him. But late, mid to rounds, he had some issues, I think, with the cardio, just the pace, and Palacio was not going away at all, and he was giving some difficult problems, really testing his mettle to see if he's actually up to that par. He has a very good, obviously, amateur resume, that being Imam Katayev. But David Morrell, Cuban boxer, southpaw, counterpuncher, power in both hands, coming off his first loss ever in his career against David Benavidez, where pretty much the experience that he hasn't experienced yet in the game so far against a guy who is very wily, very veteran-esque of a David Benavidez, even though he's a younger man with his age, but he's been around the block a lot more than a David Morrell. And I think it's a very good experience for a guy like David Morrell, not going against a hellacious power puncher such as a guy like a David Benavidez again, where Morrell did lose the fight. I will be honest, he did lose that fight against Benavidez, but there was more. There was meat left off the bones. I think he could have performed a lot better than what he actually did. I think he's going to grow from that loss. And I think a name like an Imam Katayev, who's not really a name but has a pretty good resume on the up and up and is ready to be able to stake his claim and get a name like a David Morrell on his resume as a win. I think David Morrell is going to get the job done. I'm kind of wary of Katayev's chin. He tends to slow down later in fights, and he tends to be getting a little bit sloppy and when things are going to get done. And David Morrell has gone through the fire against one of the most hellacious power punchers, even though his power isn't the same in the light heavyweight division, hasn't carried up in terms of aura and name value and all these things, that being David Benavidez. David Morrell had some shots that landed on him, which absolutely fucking terrible, especially the jab, body shots. He was definitely hurt, but he put on his poker face as best as he could. And moving on up the card, we got Subrial Matias versus Alberto Puello. Puello is an undefeated fighter coming off some pretty good wins recently on his resume, such as in Gary Antoine Russell and a Sandor Martin. He's a champion as of right now, but both of those fights that he had, and recently, like I would think, like the three of the last four fights that he's had, have come by like split decision or majority decision. So he's been in very close competitive fights between these guys, but obviously they gave him the victory over that. And after the loss from Liam Paro, that being Subrial Matias, he got two back-to-back KOs where he's back with in his rhythm and momentum and getting his way and getting some confidence back into him to be able to get a step up like an Alberto Puello and get a type of matchup where he can be able to crown himself as a champion. This one is kind of difficult to me because I think Puello is a better overall boxer and his style, and obviously he gets in these type of firefights. He's fought against a dude like Gary Anton Russell who absolutely demolished this guy that just beat Pitbull Cruz in amazing fashion. I'm blanking out on his name, but that performance that Gary Anton Russell had against the last dude that he just fought, Mexican guy, I'm really blanking out on his name. Jose Valenzuela, there we go. He really just outgunned him and outspeeded him and the power and everything and all that fashion. Even though it's not insane, he pretty much had not a great performance against Alberto Puello. Puello really has his fight and fights at his rhythm and does things that he usually normally does, and that usually what gets him the win in most fights. So, Bro Matias, you already know what you're going to get with him. He gets hit with a lot of shots. Obviously, he carries a lot of power, straight pressure. He's walking you down. He's trying to be able to get you out of there. Puello has gone through not as the same as competition in terms of like up to par where he kind of just like meandering. He's kind of like mid, even though he somehow pulls off a win. I think he gets the job done against Subrial Matias, even though I wouldn't be surprised if Matias knocks him out cold. But Matias has an issue where he gets hit too much. He can be getting outboxed, and he just allows himself to get outpointed while he's out there gunning for a knockout. So while Puello, his recent, resume and things have us going, he is a champion and he has some pretty decent names, even though Martin has been out for quite some time, that being Sandor Martin. But it was a close and competitive fight that what I expected because Sandor Martin is actually game and Puello he's not bad. He's pretty okay. He's not elite. He's just a very good boxer that can be able to implement his style, doesn't carry a lot of power, doesn't have a lot of knockouts and names on his resumes. Just the last two fighters that I've been previously naming. But again, they've been coming by split decision. Maybe this one could be somewhere a little bit more dominant for Puello, but I'm going to go with him by decision. And moving on to the co-main event, we have Shakur Stevenson versus William Zepeda. I think this one is going to be very, very easy, but I'm going to go in depth a little bit more with their recent resumes and how that stuff has been going. Shakur Stevenson is coming off a dominant win against Joshua Padley, who got that one on short notice. He should have been fighting Floyd Schofield on that card, but it was all like on 2-day notice that they had to pick somebody up. And Padley has come back and he got a win recently on one of the DAZN cards that they had over there in England by Queensboy Promotions. I'm pretty much certain that's what he's under as of right now. And Padley is a pretty decent fighter. He's not, upper echelon, but, got to get in there against Shakur Stevenson. You already know what you're getting with Shakur Stevenson, where he's very, very defensively responsible. He's not going to be able to go out there and, mess things up. And William Zepeda is an undefeated fighter as of right now. He's coming off two close wins against Tevin Farmer. First time out, he won, I think, by majority decision or split decision. And the last time out, he won by majority decision. And the second time out, where I thought Tevin Farmer actually pulled off not an like a comeback win of all time. I don't think he won, but I think one of the best comebacks of all time. With him getting injured and getting early hurt in the fight and getting wobbled all over, it looked like it was the beginning of the end for him. And William Zepeda was in absolute control of that one. But eventually, somehow, Tevin Farmer, just off grit, toughness, and just fucking heart and guts, dude. He just pulled it off and was able to make it a draw. Obviously, it didn't go his way. And both of those wins, especially the first one where Zepeda got dropped and was looking a lot bad early and eventually just wear it on later. It was kind of a very big difference in the first fight where they had where Zepeda came on strong late in the first one, and he started off really hot in the first and just weathered off in the second. In this one, like I was going to be able to exclaim earlier, I think this is going to be an easy one for Shakur Stevenson. I think he's just going to completely outbox and make William Zepeda look like a fool out there. If Tevin Farmer is doing the things that he's doing at his age and with his wear and tear and all the things that he's gone through so far in his career, a young, hungry, and almost in their prime Shakur Stevenson is going to go in there and absolutely dominate William Zepeda. It's not going to be pretty. It's going to be boring. There's not much that's I expect to be able to go on. Usually you have to prepare yourself for that when you get a Shakur Stevenson fight. But yeah, I think Shakur Stevenson is going to go out there and make William Zepeda look like an absolute fool, get his first loss on his resume, even though he kind of has warmed up to that style because, again, he's already fought Tevin Farmer twice, so maybe he can be able to know those type of adjustments, and maybe it may be a good style matchup because he already fought this style twice already beforehand. But besides that, he still was struggling against Farmer in that one, and I just think Shakur Stevenson is a better fighter, especially defensively, than Tevin Farmer as of right now. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Shakur Stevenson by decision. And we move on to the main event, which is Hamzat Sheeraz versus Edgar Berlanga. Very, very interesting matchup. I think this is in the light heavyweight division. I don't know if this is still in 168, that being the super middleweight division. Very, very, I think, interesting matchup. Two young, hungry fighters coming off very disappointing recent bouts with, Edgar Berlanga coming in as a very heavy underdog against Canelo Alvarez. I think everybody expected him to be able to get whooped on in that one, and that's exactly what happened in that fight. But especially for Hamzat Sheeraz with, all the hype and all the crowd, especially the UK crowd, really pushing him hard and really trying to make him the next big thing in 168 with all the KOs and all the names that he's kind of, got there regionally. And then he matched up against Carlos Adames in, I think, the Beterbiev versus Bivol 2 card. And while that was going on, I think that was a blatant robbery. I think Carlos Adames 100% won that fight very easily against Hamzat Sheeraz. Made Hamzat Sheeraz look like an absolute fool out there. A complete fraud check. While, yes, Sheeraz does have great reach and he's, kind of the wiry, long, stringier type of fighter, he just wasn't able to do anything insignificant or known until like later in the fight. But until then, I think he was getting blown out on the cards, for being quite honest. And he's coming off that disappointing performance, which was a draw. And now he's going to jump into a guy with Edgar Berlanga, who's, I've been out for quite some time. I think he's been out for at least, it's not been a year, but I would say almost 9 months since his last time out, since he fought Canelo. Both of these guys are very mid to me, man. A lot of hype on both of their names. Obviously, there's a lot of potential and a lot of talent both ways. They both have power. Both are, different type of fighters, where Sheeraz is more the long-rangier 1-2 type of fighter where, he keeps things more at his distance and he can be able to make things go. And Berlanga is more of a brute. Even though he has skill, he does have skill in boxing. His skill is not great, but he does carry a lot of power, and he obviously throws everything or almost everything in hellacious shots with his power shots. Man, this is a tough one because I think both of these guys are very, very mid. I'm going to go with Edgar Berlanga on this one. And the only reason I am going with him is based off the experience that he had with Canelo. Experiencing that Canelo loss, he can be able to bounce back and rebuild himself better. And have that experience with him, and he can be able to take that and make himself a better fighter and move on longer with his career. There's no shame in losing to Canelo, even though, everybody kind of knew that you were going to lose to Canelo. I just have that really bad taste in my mouth about Hamzat Sheeraz and how they absolutely pulled off a blatant, stupid, uncalled for robbery where they should have gave that win to Carlos Adames, but they somehow fooled their way into a draw to be able to call it a draw. So that way, he obviously doesn't lose his undefeated record, that being Hamzat Sheeraz. Sheeraz has a chance 100%. I do think that he is skilled. He has talent, but Again, both of these fighters, their defense is not the greatest, and they're both there to be able to get hit. And obviously, again, like I said before, they both carry a lot of power. And while they do, it wouldn't surprise me that Khamzat Shiraz KOs, Berlanga, even though Berlanga has a pretty decent chin. He only got knocked down by Canelo, but after that, he pretty much survived the onslaught from there on. And Shiraz, he got touched up a little bit by Carlos Adames, but not really wobbled, hurt into another level. But if he's getting touched up by Adames, he can definitely get touched up by Edgar Berlanga, even though, again, I think Adames whoops on Berlanga. But it is what it is. It's politics. It's boxing. What do you expect? That's usually what you're going to get. The highly favored money, cash cow type of guy. The A side is usually going to be favorable by the fans and the judges, unless, obviously it's blatant that the fans can be able to see that everybody else is seeing. But yeah, I'm going to go with Edgar Berlanga on this one by KO. And it should be I hope it's very entertaining. At least, these guys, they're going to be talking a lot, especially Berlanga. But they carry a lot of potential and a lot of talent and a lot of KO power. So yeah, like this video if you obviously like this video. Comment your opinions on what you think is going to go down on this card. I don't think, again, it's not a stacked card, but there's definitely a lot of notable names that is going to be on this card that is something to be able to feast your eyes on for boxing fans all around the world. And comment your opinions on what you think is going to go down on this card as well. Do you think Morrell comes out on top? You think Kataev as an underdog, or maybe Subrial gets a knockout, or Shakur is a fraud and he's going to get, demolished by Zepeda, which I highly doubt is going to happen. And the main event is kind of a toss-up, so who are you going to be rooting for in that one? And subscribe. Subscribe, boxing fans, because you're here for a reason. You love this type of content, and I'm going to continue giving it because you love it so much. Thank you guys again for watching again, and peace.